The rain came down in sheets, turning the streets of Marlow City into rivers of slick neon. Officer Darren Holt squinted through the windshield of his cruiser, wipers thudding in a slow rhythm, the radio crackling with static. His first week on the job, and already they tossed him the graveyard shift in the East Sector, where the city gave up pretending it was safe. Dispatch buzzed in suddenly, sharp and urgent. Unit 27, we've got reports of an altercation in the Old Point Industrial Zone. Multiple witnesses reporting explosions and structural damage. No known suspects. Proceed with caution. Darren leaned forward, heart spiking. Unit 27 en route. He flipped on the siren, not the full whine, just a pulse, and turned onto Mercer, tires splashing through puddles. The Old Point Zone had been abandoned for a decade, a graveyard of twisted steel and crumbling warehouses. Perfect place for a drug deal gone bad or a gang shootout. But explosions? He approached the chain-link gate at the end of the service road, headlights sweeping across rusted warning signs and graffiti. The air shimmered. Then, boom! A deafening blast echoed from deep inside the complex. Orange light lit up the night sky like a second sun. Darren hit the brakes, eyes wide, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. He scrambled out of the cruiser, hand instinctively dropping to his holstered sidearm. Thunder cracked overhead, but it wasn't from the storm. Another explosion tore through the silence, this time hurling debris from the second story of an old shipping warehouse. Darren ducked as a twisted metal beam slammed into the street just 20 feet from him, sparking as it slid across wet concrete. And then he saw them, two figures, teens, maybe 17, 18. A boy and a girl, standing atop the broken remains of the warehouse roof, glowing with energy that didn't come from any generator. The girl's arms were wreathed in violet flame, her eyes blazing like suns. The boy was bleeding, shirt torn, his body crackling with raw electricity. They were yelling, but not in fear. They were screaming at each other. Then, without warning, they charged, and the sky exploded again. The impact shook the warehouse like a bomb. Shattered panels and steel beams rained down from the upper floor, and Darren barely had time to duck behind his cruiser before a wall of heat washed over him. The air turned electric. Every hair on his body stood up as the ground trembled beneath his boots. From his cover, he risked a glance around the corner. They were still going at it, brother and sister if he had to guess. Both of them looked too young to be this deadly. The boy gritted his teeth and swung a fist, sending a wave of crackling energy that blew a whole support column clean off its foundation. The girl caught it mid-air, with one hand encased in writhing violet flame. She hurled it back, screaming something unintelligible, and the beam slammed into the boy, sending him tumbling through a broken wall. Darren's radio crackled. Unit 27. Status? He grabbed the mic with shaking fingers. This is Holt. I've got two metas. Teenagers. They're tearing the place apart. I need backup. Immediate. A sudden crack overhead interrupted him. He looked up. The girl was falling. Correction. Diving. Straight at him, propelled by a burst of flame that cracked the air like thunder. Darren rolled as she slammed into the pavement where he'd just stood, cratering the asphalt in a burst of purple fire. Shards of hot pavement sprayed out in every direction. She straightened slowly, shoulders heaving. Her hands were clenched, flames flickering up her forearms. And her eyes, God, her eyes were glowing white. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Darren raised his hands. "I'm a cop. I don't want to hurt you." She blinked, then laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound. "You couldn't hurt me." A surge of blue light streaked in from the left, and suddenly the boy was there again, slamming into her side with a shoulder charge. Both teens flew across the street, rolled over a wrecked dumpster, and hit the wall of the warehouse with a crunch that made Darren wince. They scrambled to their feet again, back in their standoff. "You always ruin everything," the boy snarled. "You're the one who ran," she snapped back. "I tried to save us." Electricity surged, fire rose, and Darren realized something in that moment, watching these two titans tear each other apart. This wasn't just a fight, it was a family war. Darren kept low, his pulse racing as he crept behind a half-collapsed crate. Whatever this was, it was way beyond his pay grade. Academy hadn't prepared him for mutant siblings with godlike powers locked in a personal grudge match. But he wasn't about to run either. He peeked again. The boy's hands were up, arcs of lightning dancing across his fingers, casting long shadows through the rain. His face was pale beneath the grime, bleeding from a cut over one brow. He looked terrified, furious, and heartbreakingly young. "You think Mom wanted this?" he shouted. "You think she wanted you to turn into a damn weapon?" The girl's flame flared higher. Her boots scorched the pavement beneath her as she stepped forward, voice trembling with rage. "She didn't want us running. She died for us to fight back. You're the coward, Levi." Levi. The name hit Darren like a puzzle piece falling into place. He remembered the briefings. A redacted report out of Burnside Labs 6 months ago. Something about escaped test subjects. Twins. Names classified. Until now. "I didn't ask for any of this, Rose," Levi screamed. "Neither did I," she fired back. And then they clashed again. Energy on fire, fire on lightning. The warehouse behind them finally gave up the ghost and collapsed in a roar of twisted steel and splintered wood. Debris rained down around them, but they didn't flinch. It was like they were the only two people in the world. Darren had to act. He didn't know how to stop them, but maybe he could slow them down before one of them killed the other. He reached for the emergency pack in the cruiser and yanked out the sonic disruptor, the kind they only issued for extreme metahuman encounters. It looked like a high-tech fire extinguisher, but would emit a focused frequency burst strong enough to disorient most enhanced physiology. Assuming these two had physiology that could be disoriented. He crouched, steadied his grip on the trigger, aimed between them as they circled each other again. "Please don't make me do this," he muttered. But Levi's hands surged with lightning. Rose screamed and launched herself at him, flame bursting from her shoulders. And Darren squeezed the trigger. The disruptor whined to life, emitting a shrill, focused pulse that split the air like a scream made of metal and static. It hit both teens, mid-charge. Rose let out a strangled gasp, fire extinguishing instantly into smoke as she collapsed mid-air and skidded hard across the pavement. Levi's eyes rolled back. His arc of lightning faltered, then snapped inward with a sharp pop as he crumpled to one knee, clutching his head. Darren sprinted forward, boots splashing through rain-soaked debris, pulse hammering in his throat. The disruptor was still humming, flickering red as it cycled down. He dropped it beside him and knelt over the girl. She was groaning, dazed, but breathing. Her arms twitched, and her skin steamed with residual heat. But the fire was gone. For now. Behind him, Levi pushed to his feet slowly, breathing raggedly. "What did you do to us?" he asked, voice hoarse. Darren kept a wary eye on him. "It's a non-lethal suppressor. Temporary. I didn't come here to fight you." Levi's hands flexed at his sides, sparks twitching at his fingertips. He looked down at his sister, then at Darren again. "We didn't ask for this," he said. "Any of it." "I believe you," Darren said. "Then walk away. Let me finish this." He took a step forward, and Darren drew his weapon. "Don't," he warned. "You may be faster, stronger, hell, probably bulletproof, but this won't stop me from trying." Levi's jaw clenched. He stared at Darren, fists shaking, then back at Rose, still unconscious, her breathing shallow. The fight drained out of him all at once. His shoulders slumped. He dropped to the curb and covered his face with both hands. Darren stayed ready. A long minute passed. Rain pelted them both in silence. She tracked me here, Levi finally said. I've been off-grid for months. I wasn't hurting anyone. Why was she trying to stop you? She thinks she's some kind of hero now, he muttered. After what they did to us, she wants to make it mean something. I just want to be left alone. He glanced up at Darren, eyes tired and bloodshot. You don't know what they turned us into. Darren holstered his weapon slowly. No, he said, but I'm starting to find out. And then Rose stirred, groaning, flames crackling again across her arms. The temporary peace was over. Rose coughed and rolled to her side, steam rising from her back as her powers flickered back online. A low hum filled the air, the sound of unstable energy building inside her again. Levi was on his feet instantly. No, Rose, he said, holding out a hand. Don't. She looked up, dazed, eyes glowing dimly through tangled, soaked hair. Her lip was bleeding. Her arm trembled as she tried to rise. You hit me with a truckload of volts, she rasped. And you want me to just not finish this? It's done, he snapped. You're not hearing me. We're done. You win, okay? You dragged me into the open. Now what? Gonna haul me back to the agency like a prize? Her glow flickered uncertainly. Darren stood between them, not raising his weapon this time, just watching. Agency? He asked quietly. Rose's eyes snapped to him. You don't get to ask questions. I think I do, he replied. You just cratered half a city block. She pushed to her feet, shaky, defiant. We were born in a lab, raised in rooms without doors, taught how to kill before we could read. And when they were done, they threw us away. She didn't throw herself away, Levi growled. She signed up. It's the only way to stop them, Rose hissed. We can't run forever. Better to run than become them. Darren stepped forward. Hey, both of you. I don't care who did what. Right now, you're both in deep. I've got backup coming, and if they see what I've seen, you're not walking out of here alive. Rose stared at him. So what? We just leave? Pretend none of this happened? Darren glanced at the fallen disruptor unit, at the blown-out street, the warehouse smoldering behind them. He sighed. I didn't say that. He reached into his coat, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out his badge. He tossed it to the ground between them. Levi blinked. What are you doing? I'm making a choice, Darren said. I swore to protect people. If what you're saying is true, if there's someone out there making kids into weapons, then I'm not doing it from behind a desk or in a patrol car. He looked them both in the eyes. I don't work for the agency, but I will work with you. Rose's flame dimmed to a flicker. Levi didn't move, but his fists unclenched. Then, sirens. Far off, but getting closer. Darren looked at the ruined road behind him. You've got about 30 seconds to vanish. Rose's eyes narrowed. You just threw your life away. Yeah, he said. Let's make sure it was worth it. Levi was the first to move. He darted toward Rose, grabbed her arm, not roughly but urgently, and whispered something Darren couldn't hear. She stared at her brother for a heartbeat, then nodded, the fire around her palms flickering one last time before she extinguished it like snuffing out a candle. Together, they turned. A deep rumble shook the cracked pavement as Levi's electricity surged beneath his feet, forming a pulse that cracked the ground in a glowing arc. Rose grabbed his shoulder, and with a blinding flash, they vanished. Gone. Not a trace. Darren staggered back, blinking the afterimage from his vision, just as two black SUVs skidded into the clearing. Floodlights erupted from their rooftops. Armed figures piled out, faces hidden behind tinted visors, bodies clad in matte armor without insignias. Not police, not military, Agency. A woman stepped out behind them. Tall, crisp black coat, platinum hair coiled into a knot. Her eyes swept the area with the efficiency of a surgeon. When she spotted Darren standing alone beside the wreckage, holding nothing but empty hands and rain in his hair, she strode forward. "Officer Holt," she said. Her voice was low, pleasant, and ice cold. "You were the first responder?" He nodded. She smiled like a person used to getting what she wants. Witnesses reported metahuman activity, a skirmish between two individuals, high energy readings, destruction of federal containment property. But when we arrive, no one, no trace. Darren shrugged. "You're late." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You saw them." "I saw an abandoned warehouse fall in on itself," he replied. "Storm like this wouldn't take much." "You're lying," she said simply. "I'm writing a report," Darren said, pulling his soaked notepad from his coat and scribbling something deliberately useless. A silence passed. Then she smiled again. "They'll burn you for this, you know." He gave a half smile right back. "Then I hope they bring a big enough match." The woman turned sharply, giving a nod to her agents. They fanned out, scanning, sweeping, measuring, but they'd find nothing. The kids were gone. The evidence was washed away. Darren stood in the rain watching them work. Somewhere out there, two kids with the power to level cities were on the run again. And now, he was with them. By the time the agency packed up and pulled out, the storm had eased into a low drizzle. Darren stood at the edge of the ruined warehouse lot, watching taillights vanish into the mist, his soaked uniform clinging cold to his skin. The spot where the siblings had vanished still crackled faintly with static, like the air hadn't yet caught up to the fact they were gone. He turned and walked back to his cruiser. The inside was a mess, mud, broken glass, scorch marks. He sat down anyway, hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield. He'd made his choice. No badge, no backup, no rule book, just a promise he hadn't said aloud, not even to himself yet. Protect them, before they were killed, or used, or worse, turned into monsters. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts until he found an old one. Detective Rios, ex-cybercrimes, deep clearance, bounced from the force 3 years ago for poking into things no one wanted surfaced. She was brilliant, unstable, dangerous, the perfect place to start. He hit send. Rios answered on the first ring. "You finally found something, didn't you?" "2 kids," he said, "brother and sister. Metas. They're being hunted. Not by gangs, by something bigger." "Agency?" she asked. "Yeah. And they're not just cleaning up, they're erasing." Silence. Then, "I'm listening." He told her everything, except their names. Not yet. He didn't fully trust her, but she agreed to meet. Midnight. Edge of the old train tunnels. When he hung up, he leaned back and closed his eyes. For the first time since the fight, he let himself feel it. Not fear, not regret, but purpose. Like this was what he'd been waiting for his whole life, without knowing it. A new file, a real one. A case nobody wanted opened. He would find out who had created those kids, what had been done to them, and who else was out there. Because if Levi and Rose were just 2, then Marlow City was sitting on a powder keg, and something was about to light the fuse. Her hair was still damp from the rain, plastered to her face, and the bruise on her ribs throbbed with every breath. She didn't heal fast, just strong. The difference meant every injury came with a price. Levi sat cross-legged on the floor, hunched over a burner phone he'd rigged to charge via a car battery and a loop of copper wire. Blue light flickered faintly across his face. He hadn't spoken since they left the warehouse. "Say it," she muttered finally. Levi didn't look up. "Say what?" Whatever's bubbling in your head, that I went too far, that I should have let you go, that I'm just like them. He sighed. You think I want to fight you, Rose? You're damn good at it. He set the phone aside and stood slowly, rubbing his temples. I didn't want this. Any of it. I didn't choose to be a walking lightning rod. You think I don't have nightmares about what happened in Burnside? You ran, she snapped, sitting up. You left me there to burn while they tore the place apart. I didn't know if you made it out. You didn't check. The silence after that was thick. Levi looked at her with something closer to guilt than anger. Her hands were shaking, and she clenched them into fists to make it stop. I stayed behind because I thought we could change it, she said. I thought if I played by their rules, I could fix what they did to us. But you were right. She looked up. They don't want to fix anything. They want to control it. Levi nodded once. Then let's stop playing. They didn't need more time to plan. They'd grown up in concrete cells and VR combat simulations. Their minds were always working in contingency loops. He tossed her a hoodie. We need new names, new ID, drop off the grid again, maybe link up with the Ghost Network. People still run with that? Yeah, ex-operatives, failed experiments, people who vanished after Burnside. I've seen their signals. Can they be trusted? Levi smirked. We're not the only ones who want the agency dead. Rose pulled the hoodie over her head, fire dying behind her eyes. Good, she said, because I'm not running anymore. The next morning brought a gray, ash-colored dawn and a tension that settled like fog over the city. Marlowe looked ordinary from a distance, buses groaning through intersections, shop windows flickering awake. But underneath, something was shifting. The street cameras had new algorithms. The drones flew lower. The agency was tightening its grip. Back in the tunnels beneath the city, Darren paced a circle around a makeshift workspace. Rios had laid out her portable array, 3 battered laptops, a signal scrambler the size of a toaster, and a wall of holographic data pulled from ghost servers that hadn't officially existed in 10 years. You sure this is secure? He asked, eyeing the flickering screens. If it wasn't, you'd already be in an agency van with a bag over your head, she muttered, not looking up. Relax. I built this firewall out of black market biotech and a stolen AI interface. It's not pretty, but it bites. She tapped a command and brought up a series of files, each one stamped with a Burnside Labs watermark. Half were corrupted. A few were video stills. Children, maybe 9 or 10, in hospital gowns, each standing on a different color-coded square. Their faces were blurred by data loss, but the outlines, height, posture, were unmistakable. You think these are them? Darren asked. Some of them, Rios said. Burnside didn't just make Levi and Rose. They made dozens. Most didn't survive long enough to leave. Those that did, either they vanished or they were deployed. Deployed? Rios glanced at him. Ever hear about the blackout in Telcrest 4 years ago? Or the gas leak that leveled an entire wing of Branton Medical? Darren nodded slowly. No one ever found a cause. Right, because the cause wasn't a bomb, she said. It was a kid. He rubbed his jaw, absorbing it. So Levi and Rose are part of a much bigger mess. Bigger, older, and a hell of a lot more dangerous. Suddenly, one of the screens flashed, a blinking signal from a dark forum Rios had been scraping. A post, 1 line. Ashes in Marlowe, looking for sparks. Rios froze. They're reaching out, she whispered. Darren leaned closer. That's them? No, Rios said, but it's someone who knows they're alive. And somewhere, blocks away, Rose slipped a folded note under the door of a locked storage unit, her fingers burning faint purple. On it were 3 words, We're not alone. The note slid into the shadows like a secret dropped into a wishing well. Rose stood there for a second longer, fingers twitching with residual heat, then pulled the hood over her head and vanished into the morning crowd. Inside the storage unit, tucked between rows of rusted tools and retired tech relics, something stirred. A sensor in the wall, camouflaged beneath layers of dust and fake insulation, registered the heat signature left by her touch. Somewhere deep in the circuitry, a dormant receiver blinked to life. Half a mile away, buried beneath a pawn shop with no customers and no working electricity, a monitor lit up. An old man with burn scars down one side of his face leaned closer, cracked lips parting in a smile that hadn't been used in years. "She's back," he whispered. "The flame still burns." Meanwhile, Darren and Rios were following a trail through the city's underbelly. Burner chatter, dead drops, old safe house pings that had gone quiet years ago, suddenly glowing green again. A pattern was forming. People who'd gone dark when Burnside fell were surfacing, fast and carefully, like soldiers waking from a long sleep. Rios pointed to the map overlay. That forum message, Ashes in Marlow, wasn't just poetic, it's a location cue. Old Ashford Street, east side of the city. Darren frowned. What's there now? Last I checked, a condemned elementary school and a convenience store that's definitely a front for something. You're thinking rendezvous point. I'm thinking recruitment, she said. Someone's pulling the ghost together. And if Levi and Rose are walking into it, we need to get there first. Darren grabbed his jacket. Let's move. Levi sat on a rooftop across from the Ashford ruins, his eyes scanning the block like a hawk. The weight of their next step pressed hard on his shoulders. You sure they'll show? He asked. Rose crouched beside him, tying her boot. They already have, she said, nodding toward a figure walking across the lot. A woman late 20s, hair like ink, coat covered in patchwork cables and plates of reworked armor. She paused at the shattered front doors of the school and looked up at them. She raised her hand. 2 fingers, a silent gesture. Rose froze. She's one of us. Rose stood slowly, her body tense but steady. That hand signal, it wasn't just a wave. It was from training, one of the coded signs they'd been taught back at Durnside. 2 alive, approach safe. It had been drilled into them when they were barely tall enough to see over the cafeteria tables. Her name's Nora, Rose said under her breath. We trained together. She vanished during the neural trials. Everyone thought she died. Levi's eyes narrowed. She was ahead of us. Way ahead, Rose confirmed. Could reroute signals in real time. The techies used to call her a walking broadcast tower. They exchanged a look, then climbed down the fire escape, quiet and watchful, feet landing in puddles without a sound. They crossed the street, stepping carefully over cracked concrete and exposed rebar as the dead school loomed over them like a half-buried memory. Nora didn't move as they approached. She just waited. You really are alive, Rose said. Nora smiled faintly. So are you, barely. Levi folded his arms. You recruiting. I'm warning. That caught both of them off guard. The agency's rolling out a new wave of hunters, not human, not fully. Grafted tech, embedded directives, zero hesitation, Nora said, voice low. They're targeting Burnside survivors, finishing what they started. How many of us are left? Rose asked. Less than 20 confirmed. Maybe a dozen willing to fight. Rose took that in with a grim nod. Then we start with that. Nora's eyes flicked to Levi. You in, runner? He hesitated, looked at Rose, looked at the boarded-up building behind her, and then nodded. I'm in. But no more secrets. No more ghost trails. We do this loud. Nora's grin returned. Then follow me. She led them inside through a side entrance, weaving through dark, gutted classrooms and halls littered with broken desks and long dead overhead lights. In the gymnasium, beneath a bleached-out scoreboard and a tarp-covered climbing wall, were 6 others. Quiet, watching, ready, and one of them stepped forward, face painted in ash. "We heard the fire was back," he said. "Glad the stories were true." Rose took a long breath. "Let's burn them out." The gym smelled like old rubber and forgotten wars. Dust hung in the air like memories, catching in the shafts of light slipping through boarded-up windows. The 6 figures watched silently as Rose, Levi, and Nora crossed the warped gym floor. One of them, tall, broad-shouldered, head shaved clean, nodded. His eyes glowed faint red, not from cosmetic effect, but from something inside. "Call me Fletch," he said. "Used to reroute satellite paths with my mind. Now I patch old gear and run comms for what's left of us." Another stepped forward, short, wiry, nervous energy crackling under her skin like static. "That's Preen," Nora said, gesturing to her. "Telekinetic compression, can fold a car like paper." Preen gave a nod but didn't speak. Her fingers twitched at her side, bunching and releasing like she was always holding something invisible. "They're survivors," Nora explained, voice carrying through the gym. "Some escaped Burnside. Some got out before the sister labs went dark. We've stayed off the radar. Until now." Fletch stepped toward Rose. "The agency's tracking everyone who survived Gen Phase. They've deployed something called Project Warden. We've already lost 2 of ours in the past month. No warning. No escape. Bodies fried from the inside. Tech signatures only the agency could embed." Levi's jaw tensed. "They're cleaning house." "Exactly," Nora said. "And we're next. Unless we fight first." A rustle at the gym doors made everyone spin. A figure stepped in, soaked from rain, hands raised. "Easy," he said. "I'm not with them." Rose's eyes widened. "Darren?" He looked different. Jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, a bandage on one hand and mud caked on his boots. But it was him, the cop who'd stood between 2 walking weapons and chosen them over orders. "Sorry for the drop-in," he said, walking slowly across the room, careful not to spook anyone. "But I figured you'd need someone who knows how the system works, someone inside." Fletch raised an eyebrow. "You're a cop?" "Was," Darren said, meeting his eyes. "Now I'm just a guy who wants the truth out." Levi chuckled dryly. "That's gonna get you killed." "Probably," Darren replied. "But if we do this right, maybe we bring the whole thing down first." The gym fell into silence again. The kind of silence that came before revolutions. Rose took center court, glanced around at the faces, hardened, hunted, haunted. And she spoke. "Then let's stop surviving." She clenched a fist. "Let's start fighting." That one word, fighting, echoed through the gym like a fuse being lit. Darren felt it in his bones. These weren't just frightened kids anymore. They were soldiers, shaped by suffering, sharpened by loss. And they'd finally found something to rally around. Each other. Nora pulled out a crumpled map and slapped it down on a warped table near the bleachers. The group circled in, a half ring of tattered hoodies, cybernetic eyes, and scarred hands. "This is a relay station here," she said, pointing to a red X scrawled over a bland industrial block in the east sector. "Looks like an old utility grid hub. But it's not. The agency's using it to bounce surveillance signals across the whole metro loop. If we kill it, we blind them, at least temporarily." Levi leaned over the map. "Temporary isn't enough." "It's a start," Darren said. "We cut their eyes. We buy time. We go quiet after that. They won't have the reach to track metas without scrambling their entire network." Rose studied the map, fingers tapping lightly on the paper. "How heavily guarded?" "Not much, because they don't think anyone knows what it is," Nora replied. "That's where we have the edge. They still think we're running scared." Fletch cracked his knuckles. "Let's surprise them." Darren looked at the group. "You have powers. I have plans. I know their routes, their response times, their blind spots. You'll need that if you're going in." "We're going in," Rose said. "You're part of this now, badge or not." He gave a crooked smile. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." Nora folded the map. "We hit it tomorrow night. One shot. Clean. Then we scatter until phase 2. "What's phase 2? Levi asked. Nora's smile faded. "That depends on what we find in the basement. Word is, the relay isn't just bouncing signals. It's intercepting them." Rose's eyes narrowed. "Intercepting what?" Nora met her gaze. "Us. Our thoughts. The agency's building profiles, behavioral models, predictive AIs based on our brainwave patterns." Levi hissed out a breath. "They're trying to replicate us." "No," Darren muttered. "They're trying to replace you." And just outside the school, beneath the sidewalk and 10 feet of steel, something stirred in the dark. A hum, a pulse, a copy, being born. 10 feet beneath Ashford Street, in a subterranean vault, cooled by artificial permafrost, a bank of pods lit up one by one. Inside each, a body floated, unmoving, eyes closed, faces pale but disturbingly familiar. Not simulations, clones. One of them opened its eyes. It wasn't just like Rose, it was Rose. Or close enough that, in the dark, the difference would be impossible to tell. A voice buzzed through a speaker embedded in the wall, sterile and genderless. Subject 7A fully integrated. Neural templates aligned at 92%. Cognitive obedience at threshold. Warden ready for deployment. Somewhere above, a technician pressed a button, and the synthetic Rose, 7A, tensed in her pod. Back in the gym, Rose felt it like a phantom strike to the chest. Her breath caught, quick, sharp. Not pain exactly, but pull. Like something deep inside her core had been mirrored in the worst possible way. "You okay?" Darren asked, his eyes scanning her face. She hesitated, then nodded. "Just a weird spike, like my power shifted, just for a second." Rios, who had joined them minutes earlier through a tunnel entrance, turned sharply. "Psychic reflection. I've read about it. Only happens when your neural signature is being actively cloned." Levi stiffened. "They're building copies." Rios nodded grimly. "If they're replicating metas based on psychic profiles, they wouldn't stop at just gathering data. They'd build soldiers, controllable, obedient. No conscience, no past. No future," Rose whispered. "They could frame us," Preen said suddenly. Her voice was tight. "If they send one of those things out powered like us, dressed like us, who's going to know the difference?" "They're not just hunting us," Darren said. "They're replacing us before they erase us." Nora unzipped her satchel and pulled out a shock rod, its edge laced with black ion tape. "Then we hit the relay hard, destroy their signal and whatever freak show they've got in the basement." Levi's eyes met Rose's. "I'm not afraid of dying," he said, "but I'm not going to be erased." "Good," Rose replied, "because tomorrow night we make sure the world remembers exactly who we are." And below their feet, in a sealed chamber of white light, Subject 7-A stepped from her pod, eyes glowing, fire blooming in her palms. Rain hit the city hard that night, thick, slanting sheets that blurred neon and turned rooftops into rivers. It masked movement, dulled the sound of boots and breathing. The kind of weather that made ghosts feel welcome. Rose crouched on the rooftop across from the relay facility, her soaked hoodie plastered to her skin. Lightning flickered in the distance, and beside her, Levi crackled faintly with restrained energy. He always did before a fight. His version of nerves. "East access hatch is clear," Rios whispered through their comms. Cameras looped, 5 minutes before they autocorrect. Across the block, Nora and Fletch crouched near the alley service door, shadowed and ready. Darren knelt beside a weathered electrical panel, prying it open with fingers that didn't shake, though they probably should have. "On my mark," Nora said. Rose took a breath, let the hum in her blood rise. One heartbeat. Now! In unison, the team surged forward. Levi dropped from the roof like lightning in reverse, hitting the side stairwell and shorting the outer sensors with a burst from his palms. Nora and Fletch moved fast and clean, no wasted motion, as they breached the side door with a timed shock charge. Darren and Rios ducked into the lobby behind a stunned security guard, Darren flashing a fake ID and stunning the man with a modified taser. Within seconds, the relay facility was theirs, but it didn't feel like a win. The place was too quiet. Rose reached the central server room and froze. The air was wrong, not just cold but charged, like a storm was trapped indoors. She stepped inside and came face to face with herself. Subject 7A stood in the center of the room, cloaked in black tactical gear, hair braided tight, eyes dead and glowing. "Hello, Rose," the clone said. "You've been marked for replacement." Behind her, 3 more figures stepped from the shadows, each one a twisted mirror of the original metas. A false Levi, buzzing with precise artificial current. A faux preen, eyes glassy, limbs unnaturally still. And a fourth, unidentifiable, wrapped in black plating that hissed softly with each breath. Rose narrowed her eyes. They built copies. 7A smiled. No, improvements. And then the lights died, and the fight began. The room exploded into motion. Rose ducked as her clone lunged, faster than she'd expected, precise in a way that felt almost robotic. Fire met fire as Rose raised her hands, a blazing burst colliding midair with the clones. The heat roared, purple and gold, throwing shadows against the server walls. Levi crashed through the doorway behind her. "Rose, move!" He hurled a bolt of lightning that arced past her ear and slammed into 7A's side. It should have dropped her. Instead, the clone twisted, absorbed the current with a flickering pulse across her body armor, and turned to him with a cold smile. Electric signature recorded, resistance adapting. "Great," Levi muttered. "They learn." Meanwhile, Preem's doppelganger slid across the floor without a sound, hurling a desk like it weighed nothing. Rose rolled sideways, barely avoiding it as the desk embedded itself in the wall. Real Preem dropped from a vent behind the clone, teeth clenched, eyes wide. "I hate being copied." She drove a concussive wave straight into the back of her double skull. The clone staggered, but didn't fall. It simply turned and locked its unblinking gaze on her, mimicking her breathing, her stance, her timing. It was like fighting a warped reflection that never got tired. Back in the hall, Darren and Rios were holding the entrance, suppressor rounds flying. The plated figure, taller than the others, less human, charged through the smoke like a tank on rails. Rios fired a sonic pulse that should have shattered its internal systems. The thing didn't even flinch. "Darren, that one's not a clone," she shouted. "It's synthetic. Yeah, no kidding." The synth grabbed him by the chest and hurled him across the hallway. Darren smashed into a bank of lockers, vision going dark for a split second before he pushed himself up, gasping. Broken ribs, at least 2. But he wasn't quitting now. Back in the server room, Rose knew she couldn't outfight 7A. Not for long. So she changed the game. She ducked low, palms pressed to the floor, and ignited a controlled explosion beneath the power grid. The entire building trembled. Lights flickered. The relay mainframe sparked wildly behind her. 7A looked up, expression blank. Rose grinned through the smoke. "If I can't stop you." She flung a column of fire directly into the data core. "I'll burn your home instead." The explosion swallowed the room. The blast rocked the entire building. Glass shattered, conduits ruptured, and heat bloomed through the halls like a second heartbeat. Rose hit the ground hard, skidding across scorched tile as fire swallowed the servers behind her. Data towers crashed inward, their lights blinking out one by one. like a dying constellation. Across the room, 7A flew backward into a steel beam with a clang that reverberated deep in Rose's ribs. The clone twitched, limbs jerking erratically as sparks danced over her skin. For a second, her eyes flickered, not just with light, but doubt. Then they went dark. Rose didn't wait. She staggered to her feet, coughing smoke, and grabbed Levi's arm as he stumbled toward her. "Out," she said. "Now." In the corridor, Preen hurled her double through a wall and collapsed next to Fletch, who was trying to hold the synth at bay with a concussive frequency cannon Darren had built from salvaged drone parts. The blast finally staggered the monster, just long enough for Rios to jam a feedback spike into its spine and twist. The synthetic jerked once, then fell, hard. Nora barked through comms. "You've got 60 seconds before this place goes Nova." "On it," Levi shouted, dragging Rose down the hall. The group barreled through the emergency exit just as fire chased them from behind. They dove into the alley, smoke and sirens rising behind them as the relay station erupted in a geyser of light and sound. A moment of silence followed. Then the backup power grid exploded, plunging half the east side of Marlow into darkness. They didn't stop running until they reached the next block, ducking into an abandoned subway maintenance tunnel. Gasping, bruised, covered in ash, no one spoke at first. Finally, Darren broke the silence, coughing into his sleeve. "Someone tell me that was worth it." Nora looked back toward the smoldering skyline, where the agency's signal relay had once stood. "They can't see us anymore," she said,